Hey everyone, I'm back. We're working on an intro. I don't know what that is yet, but we'll figure something out. Like we're troubleshooting, you know, we will get better, I promise. But I want to talk about being a New Yorker living in Connecticut and why the transition is kind of it's different. Even though Connecticut is not too far off from New York as far as a drive, depending on where you are. Um I do feel like it's different worlds for sure. And not to mention any other person that says that they're from New York are most likely from the Bronx. I grew up in Long Island, but I was born in Queens, Jamaica, Queens. And, it's definitely a difference for me. Like the people are different. Like I know that I stick out like a sore thumb, just the way that I speak, the way that I am, how I dress myself, how I present myself to the world definitely is different for people, whether they say, "Hey, where are you from?" or like they look at me and they're like wondering, like, "Okay, she's not from here." You know what I mean? And I feel like the people who are not from Connecticut know that I'm not from Connecticut, and we always end up finding each other. But that's a cool thing, though. One thing I can also say, is that um, it's not so bad as far as like attractions and things to do. Um, like New York, and yeah, like New York, there are the changes of seasons, so we do have a very warm summer, there is a very cold winter. That transition period, we pretty much have the same weather. It's like most likely, like if it's raining in New York already, like it's gonna rain in Connecticut probably an hour, 2 hours later. Like that's kind of how it works here. um as far as like the attractions go, like there's quite a lot of restaurants where I am. Like I do live on a busy street, but there are a lot of restaurants. I live very close to a college. Um, it very old style, kind of reminiscent, like when you head over to that direction, where the college is. It is very like little New York. Like they kind of trying to make it like Manhattan, but it's like much older. Like I feel like it's now they're just kind of like replenishing and like rejuvenating like these buildings, but it is very much, old worldly, that like very like uh I wouldn't say vintage, but like cobblestone buildings that still are like intact, and just very much that vibe, if you can, imagine what I'm trying to say. um Another pro is like, yes, the one thing is that there are a lot of restaurants nearby. There's a definitely a night scene. It's not as crowded as New York. It definitely is just not the same. Like even though like I feel like, okay, like I like to be where there's like less people, less commotion, more, you know what I mean? Like just more enjoy, like you can enjoy going out to eat without feeling like you're being like, it's not too congested. Like you're not feeling like too, overpowered by a crowd. And, you know, but I do kind of miss like that vibe in New York though. Like there's always like just a high energy, situation no matter where you go in New York. As far as like the five boroughs, is what I'm referring to, because I know there's other places in New York that are just not really like, yeah, I'm talking about like upstate New York, Peekskill and Utica, and like those places that are just like, not my cup of tea. But I I like that high energy. I love to have the option of that and not necessarily having to always feel like everything is always crowded, and that was how I was feeling about New York. The parking is trash. Going out, you're waiting for a long time. Everything is just overpopulated, like those are the cons, which I'm kind of like fluctuating, is not really any order now at this point, now that I'm speaking about it. Um, let's stick to a pro for Connecticut. One of the pros, another pro is that there is a lot of scenic things, like if you're into like trailblazing and you're into like going to like reserves and walking trails and being around nature, that is like a lot of pluses for me because I tend to like just love being in nature, even though I am like a city person, like I love, being in the cities and whatnot. Like I have best of both worlds, growing up in Long Island, at the parts of Long Island where, yes, it is residential, it is, neighborhood base, and there's grass, like there's backyards, and I travel to the city very often for school or for work. And, that it was always like that, balance between work and personal life, where I was able to go to work and go to the city and come back to peace and, harmony in some aspect. Not that like every portion of life was like harmony, but it was close to it, being able to shut that part of life off. um you can find that in Connecticut. um it's very family oriented, I would say. Like pretty much anybody that I meet is either like married, a fam in a like have a family dynamic, um or like engaged. And I noticed that about that. Like you don't really get the like I'm single and I'm out here like trying to find like whatever, like we linking up. And you don't find that at all. Not that I'm looking for it, because baby, I'm a mom with two beautiful babies, so that's not happening right now. um but I just noticed that, that people are just more like family oriented. Like you will catch the family out at the restaurants, at the park. I was gonna say at the parties. That too, you will it's a beautiful thing. That's another thing about Connecticut for sure. Like you don't always need a car to go everywhere. There's pretty much public transit um running along the main roads, which is pretty cool. Like you don't really often go to another state other than New York and find that. Like it's not really a thing in many places, but Connecticut does have public transit that kind of runs along the different places, along south going north and so on and so forth. Um, as far as like shopping and malls, like there's definitely your basic shopping centers. Like there's really nothing like I would say like more high end that it is like accessible unless you go way up north to the mall, West Farms. That's what it's called, right? I think so. I can't even remember what that mall is called. But if you go up north, you do find those malls, that mall that does have like the more higher end stores. And then if you go south, um within Connecticut, you do find other malls, but they're like kind of like very family, promoted. There's a lot of attractions for kids at the malls. There's stores with like more like eating and dining and, quick shops, like, ice cream shops. And, you get like your really small boutiques and whatnot, which is pretty cool. But you're not going to get your high end shopping. You're not going to find your designer places. Um, another thing, I would say it's a con. Like the thrift store shopping scene is not really my thing. Like if you find something, you just have to know how to shop here. Like you'll more than likely find something that's like really dope, because people aren't generally shopping for special things, like they're genuinely generally shopping for just basic items for like the sake of like thrifting and getting like a good deal on something. They're not really specifically looking for vintage. They're not looking for, those gems like of items, and but not to say that they're not there, because they are there. They're there. You just have to know what you're looking for in order for you to pick up those items. I have gotten some really cool things thrifting out here. Um, a lot of the times, like, you do have to wait for these flea markets that are more curated. And I would say, like, a lot of them are like young, like college kids, who like put together this, this flea market. And it's more so like streetwear, that you'll find. Like, you really won't find anything else like that's kind of like more high end and special. Um, I would say that's a con, like living out here, like especially if you love like fashion and you love to shop, you and you love vintage, you really won't find that much out here. But if you know what you're looking for, you will find something. Um, the next would I say it's a pro or a con? Hmm. The con is that there's a lot of bikes, dirt bikes, four wheelers, three wheelers, kitty cats, uh, hell cats, speedy cats. I don't know what they're called, but I have grown to despise them living on a busy street. And it's like there's no regards to like anybody when they are out there. Not whatsoever. But I mean, obviously, I moved myself in this place and I put myself in this busy street. So it is what it is. But they roll deep out here, and it's just exhausting to hear that. And even 10 o'clock at night, there's like, kid you not, 40 motorcycles that drive by, and it's endless, and when you have two sleeping babies, like, that can get pretty annoying, and even to me, like, that's just like, I can't hear my show, like, which is silly, but what can you do? Like, they're out here, like, that's what they do out here, and that's what's in, like,